Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
I have to tell you that just before you, I don't know if you knew this, we had the Hitmen on, which is a big group, and they're going to be performing in Broward.
I was listening to some of that, and that was
fantastic. Oh, my God. Did it bring back memories?
A lot of memories, and that was really awesome.
Yeah,
that was great to hear.
I know. Well, yeah, but you see, so it's kind of funny when a person wants to become a musician, the father says, "You're going to be a musician? Where are you, how are you going to earn a living?" I don't know. Did that happen to you in any way, or did you know you were going to be a lawyer from the very onset?
Well, two things. Very quickly, my book, Faith with Focus, has lyrics quoted throughout. So I've always loved music my entire life, and, I was almost a rock star.
So little did I know this.
The only two problems I had was, number one, I can't sing, and two, I never learned how to play the guitar. But but for those things, maybe I would have been a rock star.
But you have the greatest personality, the most beautiful smile, so you could just go out there in some tight jeans and, do something, shake like Elvis did. But
it's interesting because most of my life, I remember a lot of people saying, "You should be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer." Right. And it's worked out okay. So, it is important, like I said in my book, to be able to do something that you truly love and have passion. And what I loved about his interview was how blessed he felt.
Right.
And you realize it's a blessing, and God bless him.
That's right. And that's why we put in your, actually, let me just say that Brian Mangines is our guest, and he is an estate attorney here in South Florida. And he did write a book, and he writes an article every month. And his book, though, is Faith with Focus, right?
That's correct.
And the book is, as we always say, it's not religious. It's important. It's everything you do should have focus. And if you're not focused, that's when you don't get things accomplished.
Correct. Having passion is great, but having focused passion is what gets results.
Passion. That's a good way. I didn't hear that before. Focused passion. Okay. So now we know that you became a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
When, and I don't know if I asked this of you before, when did you decide to not be a criminal attorney not that you were a criminal, as defense attorney? When did you decide this was the one you wanted to do, to be an estate attorney, estate planning attorney?
Well, I've had a long career. I first became a member of the bar in 1990 up in Connecticut, and then moved to Florida in 97. So I've been a member of the Florida bar since 1997, and I've done a lot of things over my career. Did a lot of litigation, but I've always enjoyed the estate planning and probate part of the practice, even though I did a lot of employment discrimination, a lot of federal jury trials, heavy-duty stuff. But as I got older and my kids were getting older, I really wanted to focus more and more on estate planning. And that's when I went back and got my LL.M degree from the University of Miami in estate planning, and really has transitioned my practice over the last almost 10 years or so. And I love estate planning because obviously the tax planning and all that is really kind of cool intellectually, but what I love the most is the family dynamics and figuring out family dynamics, because I'm the youngest of 8 kids. So I think so much of my background is brought into my estate planning practice.
Yeah, I don't often meet people who have 7 brothers and sisters. I mean, you're 8 children. How did your mother and father manage that?
Well, I asked my mom one day, I said, "Mom, how did you raise 8 kids?" And she said, "Playpens." So this is back in the day.
Oh, my God, I love it. But everyone took attention. Everyone, if to go to college, to all the little things that you need to do. I really congratulate your mom and dad. Wow.
Yeah, it was quite an upbringing. I was very blessed. Again, being the youngest, there's advantages and disadvantages, but I was mostly advantaged rather than disadvantaged.
And of brothers and sisters, anyone else an attorney?
No, but my father was an attorney. My wife, Mimi's an attorney. She's an attorney, but she's actually a real estate agent here in South Florida. And my sister-in-law is an attorney. So a lot of attorneys in my family, but none of my kids and none of my brothers and sisters ever became attorneys.
Well, all you need is really one in a way.
Yes.
And then you can take care of everybody.
Right.
But you're not just an average attorney, so let's get that settled, because a lot of people, it's interesting to hear that if someone needs an attorney, they know there's an attorney, oh, I'm going to go to him or her. No. People specialize, and that's what you have to do. So talk about what entails being an estate attorney.
Well, as I mentioned, I went back and got my LL.M degree in estate planning because it can be a very sophisticated area of law and very intricate. Whether we could have a debate as to whether or not we should have a tax code where a few words in, say, a 70-page trust document, which some of these are that complex, most aren't, but could make the whole difference of millions of dollars of taxes or not. So it's very intricate, and you have to be very precise in my area of law. But one of the things that I like to stress is that estate planning is not just for rich people, and that's in fact my article. I do some public speaking, and I often like to talk about celebrities and the problems they've had with estate planning to kind of get the audience's attention. But most of those same examples, I can bring back to real life examples in my own office for normal everyday people.
So why do you say that? Why is it not just for rich people?
So let's just take an example. We do estate planning, and then we also do probate when probate becomes necessary. So I got a call from an attorney up in Connecticut, my hometown of Trumbull, Connecticut, and she had a probate up in Connecticut, but the decedent owned property in Florida. And this poor gentleman, he didn't have a will, no estate planning whatsoever. He was single, but he had a longtime girlfriend, significant other. He had a couple brothers, and then he has a mom who's 94 years old on Medicaid up in Connecticut. And he kept saying, I'm going to get around to my estate planning. He wasn't well. And as it turns out, he never did any estate planning. And because of that, and so the reason we were hired in Florida, if you don't have properties from another state, property titled in a trust, then it has to go through the probate courts. It's called the ancillary probate. So, because
it's where
the Florida
you're living,
property,
right? So,
well, it's where you're domiciled, but for property, for real estate, it's where you're situated, where the real estate is actually situated. So that's how we had to go through Connecticut probate and a Florida probate. So it gets very complicated. But the point of this story is the girlfriend who he wanted to provide for will get nothing. The sons won't get everything. By statute, the mom's going to get everything, and then the state of the state of Connecticut's going to turn around and take all the money from mom to get reimbursed for the Medicaid, because those are the rules.
Oh my goodness.
And so that is and that's not the only disaster story we've heard, but that's just one of many disaster stories that can occur if you don't do proper estate planning.
And so let's go back to that. So all he had to do is to visit you, sit in your office, and it didn't have to be such a big deal, right? You just ask him some things, he signs some documents, and it's done.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, estate planning, there ought to be a better name for it, I guess, because it sounds, kind of complicated. And as I said, it is complicated. But the documents that I'm talking about are very basic documents. And one of my jobs as an estate planning attorney is to educate my clients and bring it down to layman's terms, because it's very important that my clients understand what they're signing and what's in these documents. So that's why I take the time to try and go through it, often, repeated times, just so they really get the gist of it. But if he had done some basic estate planning, not very expensive, he would have been able to direct who he wanted to have what and how, and he could have avoided that result. And
I think about his longtime girlfriend. That just seems so sad. So she'd never got anything because she wasn't even married to him, and he would never have died if he thought that would happen.
That's right. Right.
And here his mother in her 90s inherits it, and then they take it away from her, from all the things.
Yes.
Wow, that's a very powerful statement, actually. So anybody out there, I just have to tell everyone, okay, if you don't have a will, you don't have any kind of an estate, you've got to call this wonderful guy. His name's Brian Mangines, and he is wonderful. I mean, all you need to do is talk to him, look in his eyes, and you'll see he is sweet, he's smart. I'm so happy that he's part of what we do here. And the way you're going to get in touch with him, you're going to call him at 561-245-4709. Again, 561-245-4709. You can schedule an appointment, And I think you need to do that. Even if after you talk to him, I'm sure your consultation is free, just to talk.
We offer a free consultation. And I would also add, if someone has existing estate plan documents, they should be reviewed every 2 to 3 years.
Things change.
Things change. The laws change. Situations change. So it's really important. We recommend every 2 to 3
curious,
years.
So because you're licensed in Connecticut, you can handle both states, because an attorney, unless they're licensed, can't do that.
Yeah, I don't really do much up in Connecticut. I can.
Yeah,
that referral came in. So the attorney up in Connecticut is handling the Connecticut estate. I'm just handling the Florida aspect of it. But yes, I can practice in Connecticut if called upon to do so. And I know a lot of lawyers up in Connecticut. So anyone who needs a lawyer in Connecticut, I could probably get them in the right hands.
Well, okay. So now let's talk about someone doing the right thing. Let's say that they're listening now. They say, "Oh, I really need someone like this. I'm going to call Brian Mangines." And what should they be bringing to your office? What should they be doing?
Well, one success story I could just tell you. This is often the case where young family. So in this case, there's a 2-year-old child, and in addition to the 2-year-old child, there's a baby on the way. And the husband is a young professional, and the mom's a stay-at-home mom. And they had no estate planning. Well, he's got his own business, and he's doing very well. And he's had some health issues over the years. So
how old is he about?
He's in his late 30s. So he's a young guy,
right.
Really fantastic guy, fantastic family. But he really needs to have his affairs in order, and thank God he took the impetus to do so. And by the way, not always easy for people to come in and do an estate plan. It's a hard thing for a lot of people to think about, and we see, especially I would say with young fathers with young kids, they really can get very anxious about the whole estate planning process. So, we understand that at my office, and we try and talk people through and be patient with people. But it's very important that they designate who the guardians are for the kids. God forbid anything were to happen, because you don't want a court battle to happen over who's going to get the kids, right? So that's one. 2, we got to make sure his business is protected. And what, by the way, would be some business succession ideas in case something were to happen to him? How would he be able to grab the value of that? There's life insurance issues in a situation like that, because we want to make sure a trust would be funded for the providing for the kids, even if something were to just happen to him, since he's a stay-at-home. So there's a lot that goes into that. So without any planning, that could be like a disaster in waiting. So that's an example. Anyone with young children should have a basic estate plan, even if they don't have a ton of assets.
This is a wonderful conversation we're having, because most people don't think about people in their 30s, 40s, even 50s having an estate plan.
Right.
They're going to live forever.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. This is an excellent thing. And if someone came in to do an estate plan, is that very expensive? They're probably thinking, well, maybe I don't have enough money right now. Could they do something very simple just to get something off the ground? Yes.
So things could be anywhere, depending if you don't need a trust and all that.
Right.
It could literally be in the hundreds of dollars to thousands, thousands, but it's not.
It's not $10,000, $20,000, $50,000.
No, not unless it's very, very sophisticated.
No, we're just talking about people now.
Absolutely.
Right.
And by the way, in Florida, if you have to go to probate, because if you don't establish a revocable living trust, which you lose no control over your assets during your life, so it's just strictly a titling issue. And in that document, it explains what your wishes are. A, during your life, if you were incapacitated, how you want to be cared for, and then B, upon your death, who you'd want to get your assets and how, whether you want to keep it in trust or give it to people outright, and that just depends on who the beneficiaries are. But the key point there is if you die in Florida and you either have no will, or if you have a will but not a trust, and things aren't properly titled, that can pass by operation of law, then you have to go through probate. And in probate, you have to use an attorney. It's the Florida law if it's $75,000 estate or bigger. So that can be much, much more expensive than if you were to spend a few $1,000s on a basic estate plan.
And I think you said something that I'm picking up on. When you start talking about an estate plan, You have to start thinking. It's a commitment. Okay, maybe you never faced it before. So am I leaving something to my mother, to my wife, to my children, to my brother? That's probably what holds people up, isn't it? To be able to make those commitments.
I have clients who they don't finish their estate plan because they can't come with a final resolution. And the husband may want one thing, the wife may want another. And I tell my clients, you got to get something in writing. We can always change it. Well, the beauty of these estate plans, a revocable living trust, is you can amend it at any time. And that's usually very easy to make an amendment. But I had a situation yesterday where a long-term married couple, the husband's retired, the wife's about to retire, and now it's time for them to do some estate planning.
But no, they should have done it before.
They should have,
right?
but they didn't.
Because they're now in their 60s, right?
Right, yes.
But think about what we just said. They should have done it in their 30s, just something, right? That's been the problem, hasn't it?
Yes.
They're not doing it early enough.
Without question. But in this case...
now it's serious.
Well, it's serious because he had a daughter from a prior marriage way, way, way long ago. This is a long-term married couple. And then they have 2 children from their current marriage. And so now the issues become, and the daughter from the first marriage is doing very, very well financially. And the 2 children are doing well, but, so in that situation, you have to do a lot of planning and soul searching, and you got to, make sure everyone's on board. And, again, another wonderful, wonderful couple. I get to work with so many great people, and I love to hear so many life stories from people. So that's one of the things that just intrigues me so much.
So I'm sure they say, Brian, what should we do? I'm sure they say that to you because you're such a kind, understanding way about you. So now they put
do.
you.
So here's the thing. Here's what I always tell my clients.
Right.
Okay, it's not my money. It's your money, so I can give recommendations. We could talk it through, but at the end of the day, I can give you some advice or what I would do, but it's your money, and I want you to understand that I'm not trying to control that. And also, if you tell me what your intentions are, it's my job to make sure that I get them down on paper so that would hold up against any scrutiny there is out there. So that's really my job. But, yes, I talk through these issues, and one thing I will always give advice to, if you have children, say 3 children, and you're thinking of not splitting it a third, for whatever reason. One child's doing so well economically that they don't need the money.
Or you don't like the other child.
Well, that could happen. But, in a situation where you like all 3, but you just feel, one doesn't need it, the other 2 need it more, so I want to give it to the other 2. If dad or mom doesn't have that conversation during their life, and then one of the kids calls up and breaks the news to the other one, hey, by the way, mom left you out of the will, and me and my sister were getting everything, that could be a big problem, and that's where families can splinter. So I work very hard on that to try and preserve family legacy and the family unit even after the second parent passes away.
Yeah, I can see that, or at least they leave them something, but yet when you think about it, a person could be doing very well, but they may want to use the money for charity or do something else, right?
Absolutely, and it's not even always money. It's just being thought and listen. I think it's I've lost both my parents, so it gets very hard when you lose your second parent, especially. One's tough, but losing a second parent.
We're orphans. That's what we are. I know that.
And it gets really hard, and that's when people really things come out, right?
Yes.
So because of that, if you have that conversation and they say, you know what, I do want to be left something for charity, then you've had that conversation, everything's fine. Or they say, Dad, don't worry about it, you're right, I don't need the money. Maybe leave $10,000 for my grandchild, or leave me, $5,000 just so I've been left in the will, whatever. But
you have that conversation.
Yes.
While we were talking about this, let me just tell everybody my guest is Brian Mangines, Mangines. He is he practices estate planning as an attorney. He is really very smart. He's written a book, Faith with Focus, and his office is in Boca Raton. You can call him at 561-245-4709 to schedule an appointment. I guess my next question, though, is there are a lot of things besides money people want to leave. Art, jewelry. How do you deal with that? Great
question, Anita, as always. But So Florida law makes it really easy to pass down personal property. And there's a statute in Florida that says if you reference something what's called a personal property memorandum in your will or trust, then you can leave specific items, personal property, just by keeping a list of who you want to get what. And you don't have to run into a lawyer's office every time you want to do that. So the key there, though, is to make sure that that document is referenced in the will or the trust or both. And then a person can keep a running list. So if they want to leave China to somebody, to art, and again, this is where I think the family conference comes in, where since if you're going to be talking about this anyway, why don't you talk about now who wants what, because families do fight over this.
Yes.
I think the most interesting story I had is somebody had a relic from the Revolutionary War. It's a cannonball. And, the question is, who's going to get that? And my advice at the time was make sure that if you're going to have the family conference, that everyone's on board. Otherwise, maybe it goes to the Smithsonian.
That's what I was going to say. They should dedicate it to a
because
historical.
that's the kind of thing where some families could really fight over, and you could have a big problem with kids, grandkids fighting over a relic, and we don't want to see that. So the little advanced planning goes a long way.
Yeah, that's true, because there's I remember my mother passed away, and of course I was there taking care of him. My brother kind of snuck in and out, and even at the funeral, he started grabbing a few things. I mean, it was like terrible stuff that people do.
If you knew the stories, I could tell. I mean, we have stories where people, a person passes away in the morning and the house is, emptied out by nighttime. I mean, it's
really
crazy behavior.
Yeah, so you try to avoid all that to keep everybody happy, because you can't keep everybody happy, but and then someone said something else to me, even if you don't want to leave anything to one of your children, somehow you have to say it or you don't say it. How does that work? Let's say someone says, I'm never leaving that person anything. Do they just leave them out of the will? Do they say, I'm not leaving them anything? How do they do that?
There's a couple schools of thought on that. My school of thought, and what we do in our documents, is we don't leave them $1 or $10 or anything like that. We don't put for reasons that they know of. We don't do that.
You have to put their name, though.
We specifically put their name, and we specifically disinherit them, and put language in the trust that they're treated as if they're dead. And then depending on whether they want to leave anything to, say, the grandkids, so they may not like the son, but they may want to leave something to the grandkids, we can give a specific distribution to the grandkids, or we can say that person's dead and all their descendants are dead, and that just knocks out the whole family line that way.
Has that come up with things and people?
It comes up, but, knock on wood, we've never had
You haven't had any problems with that. Well, this is quite an interesting conversation, because I guess you think you've covered everything, and then you haven't covered something, right?
You never know.
So that's why you spend time talking to them, don't you? You spend time just finding out who are they, what do they like, what don't they like, and then you can piece it all together.
I might spend the whole hour talking about family matters before I ever even mention anything about estate planning, because I really need to know that. And then the second thing is I meet and talk to my clients over several meetings. We don't just do this in one meeting. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, as I mentioned, it's an educational thing, right? Repetition is how you learn. And there are some concepts that can be difficult to understand. So I like to, through repetition, 2-3 meetings, and they hear this, then they start to grasp onto it. And then the second reason, though, is I want to make sure that no one's being unduly influenced in putting in with the will what they want to put in, or that they have the mental capacity, that they have the proper capacity to know what they have, the objects of their bounty, and who they want to give it to, and how. And that's something we take very seriously, because it's not uncommon, for example, where the daughter who's taking care of mom comes to our office. She's the one who got our name. She's the one who made the call. She's the one who shows up with mom. She's the one who wants to be in the conference room when we're talking to mom. And she's the one saying, leave out my brother, in certain situations, not always, but
yes.
So I need to separate that person and get them out of the room, and I really need to spend time just with mom, because I want to know
if the mom
mom's
even
thinking.
Has the capability of talking to
and
you.
if she doesn't, then we either stay away, we can't do it, or we need some kind of medical documentation.
We talked about this before. Yes, you're so good. Well, guess we've run out of time. But Brian, I'm so happy that you cover all this, because there's so many things, just like you said, this last issue where that woman who was his longtime, live-in soulmate, didn't get anything because of a foolish thing. So young people, get it done. Older people, get it done. Go see Brian, and thank you so much for being here, Brian.
My pleasure, Anita. Thank you so much.